Hello, this is Angela with Ferry by Ferrino, and today we're going to be talking about the different types of knitting needles. This video is mainly for beginners, just so you could understand and learn like the different types of knitting vocabulary and maybe try to figure out what kind of needles you want to buy. Alright, let's talk about needle materials. The first material I'd like to talk about is wood. Wooden needles are really actually pretty good for beginners because the material, it's very grippy and it's harder for you to lose any stitches, and the yarn sticks to it better, and so I would suggest this for a beginner. The next material is aluminum, which I would not suggest to anybody. The only reason I think anybody should buy aluminum is if you're just starting to knit and you're not really sure yet if you like knitting, and I would buy them just because they're really cheap. The next two materials are for more advanced knitters. Stainless steel is really good for getting your yarn on and off the needles more smooth. Needles made of nickel-plated brass are a very high-quality material. They cost more, but they really help you cut down on time of knitting because you're able to knit a lot faster. Now let's talk about the different needle styles. First, let's start with your classic single-point needles. These needles have one end that is blunt and one end with a tip. Now, the one negative thing about single-point needles is that they carry all the weight directly on the needles. So after you start a project and it's gotten a lot bigger, you'll feel all the weight on your wrists. Now with single point needles, you could only knit flat, which means you could make things like a scarf, a regular scarf. You could make a kitchen towel. You could make like an afghan. Now we move on to double pointed needles, which are needles that have a point on both ends. And when you buy these needles, they come in packs of 4 to 5. These are really good for knitting in the round, not flat. So if you want to knit something like a scarf that's circular, if you want to knit an infinity scarf, maybe gloves or a hat, socks, these are really great for that purpose. And last but definitely not least, the circular needles. The circular needles are very versatile. You can use them for knitting circular as well as knitting flat. And they come with many different size cords, so you could make things from as small as a baby sock to as large as an afghan, and anything in between. The great thing about circular needles is that the cord holds all of the weight. So after your project gets bigger and heavier, instead of it weighing on your needles, which eventually weighs onto your wrists, it's staying onto that cord and it's just dropping down onto your lap or your table. So it's really easier and you could knit faster, and it's not bad for your hands. Also, since it is so flexible and the wire can be bent around more or less, you can stick it in your bag easier, and you could knit on the subway, on the bus, these types of things without it getting in the way of other people. With circular needles, you can really work on any project. All the projects that I mentioned with the single and the double pointed needles can be made. So you could make anything from a regular scarf to a circular scarf to socks, a hat, gloves, a sweater, afghan, anything you want. Now let's talk about needle sizes. Now if you see here, most of the needles that I put out are ridiculously big. You probably won't be using needles this big on most of your projects, but I use them for this video so you can really see the difference between each needle. Now, when you need to choose the size of your needle, it usually pertains to the size of your yarn. And so a general idea is just when you get a bigger yarn, you're going to get a bigger needle. When you have a smaller yarn, you're going to have a smaller needle. If you really are just not sure what size, but you have a yarn that you just really want to use, check the label on your yarn. It'll have on there usually a couple of sizes of needles that will work really well with that one. Well, I hope that this lesson helped you learn a little bit more about knitting needles. This is Angela with Fairy by Ferrigno. I hope you have a great day.